Welcome to Truth Wanted. We search for proof of gods, ghosts, aliens, or any other questionable claims, but we haven't found any yet. Do you have the evidence we've been looking for? Well, then call us because the show is starting right now. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host for this week, MD Aware, and I'm joined this week by Helen Greene of Nonprofits fame. Welcome, Helen. Oh, you're muted, Helen. A classic Zoom blunder.
Oh, I was trying to be cool during the tech checks. So I will again say thank you, MD, for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here. There, I got it out now.
Fantastic. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. If you'd like to call us, you can at 1-512-991-9242 or through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Before we get started, though, we wanted to give you last week's result of the We Want the Truth, or WWTT segment. As you know, each week we ask you, the audience, a question that you can respond to in the comments section of the video. We then pick our favorite 3 responses and show them at the beginning of the next episode and give you a new question for the week. Last week, our question was, complete this sentence. The best part about being abducted by aliens is blank. And you put in your answers in the comments, and here are some of our favorites. Number 3, by the persistent dissenter, the best part of being abducted by aliens is the book deals. It's pretty good. Pretty sweet book deals.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Erica, the Manic Pixie Dream Atheist, says the best part about being abducted by aliens is the all expenses paid vacation. And let me tell you, that's pretty good because space fare across the galaxy, that's an expensive ticket. And our number 1 answer this week by Donkey Butt, the best part about being abducted by aliens is the cool little souvenirs they send you home with. Now, I'm not sure what souvenirs he's referring to, but
probably an anal probe.
Well,
Just saying.
I wasn't gonna say it, but okay.
I did.
I don't know what kind of aliens he's met. All right, but the excitement has built. Let's talk about the prompt for this week. So this week, once again, it's a complete the sentence situation. So complete the sentence. What is the worst thing you can say to a conspiracy theorist? So the worst thing you can say to a conspiracy theorist is blank. I want you to fill in your best answer in the comment section below. We'll pick our best 3 and show them on next week's show. Helen, what do you think? What's the worst thing you can say to a conspiracy theorist?
So my answer would be, teach me, Obi-Wan, take me down the rabbit hole where reason goes to die. that's I want you to teach me the ways of conspiracy, because my reason is just going to go off into a spaceship into outer space for sure. with the lizard aliens with David Icke. That's where all my reason's going to go.
Hilarious. I mean, like, it's totally true, right? I mean, I think I would, I forget what it was. It was one of those like Cyanide and Happiness web comics or some such.
I love those.
Where they were talking to a conspiracy theorist, and it was like the best thing to say to a conspiracy theorist is to attribute their conspiracy theory to another conspiracy theory and just add layers to it or play them off against each other, right? It's like, oh, those chemtrails, they're trying to manipulate our minds. No, man, it's all the Bigfoot conspiracy and the lizard people. Just play them off against each other.
It's anyway. Conspiracy turtles all the way down.
But I can't wait to see what the audience comes up with this week.
Mm-hmm.
Comment on the video. And your comment may be read on next week's episode. And hey, once again, just a reminder, our lines are open for business. So feel free to call in. The numbers at the bottom of the screen, they're 512-991-9242 or tiny.cc/calltw. We're willing to talk about anything. Helen, now what's your background for those on the show who haven't met you before?
So my background comes, I came from a Catholic household up until the time I was about 27 years old. And then I started disbelieving before then, but I completely left the church, I want to say between 24 and 27 years old. And then I started getting into paganism. And then I started as a tiny little witchlet, and then I grew into a high priestess for about 12 to 10 years when I was in the pagan religion, and I left about 5 years ago. So, and I've been an atheist activist coming up on 3 years. So yeah, that's how I kind of deconverted from religion and magical thinking and believing in new age woo-woo stuff, and then moving to a more reasoned humanist secularist existence that I exist in now, which is a lot calmer and more positive than I anticipated when I was a part of the pagan religion. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I know almost nothing about paganism.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the first question I have is paganism like a thing in itself? Like, so I also grew up Catholic like you. And I guess the nice thing, at least I was a Roman Catholic. I don't know what flavor
I
of
was
Catholic
French
you were.
Roman.
Okay. So like at least for Roman Catholics, it's like a thing, right? You can like point to the Roman Catholic Church and they have like doctrines and like a prescribed set of beliefs that you have to buy into to be part of the club. Does that sort of thing exist for paganism?
It's no orthodox because there's no dogma. There's nobody keeping track of you within the pagan religion. I mean, like there are little separatists, what I would call mini cults that exist within the religion, because whenever you're going to get groups of people together that believe a certain thing, you're going to get bad stuff. It's just the nature of the way that things are. But for the most part, you can practice paganism by yourself, or you can be part of a group, which would be called a coven. Or what we had basically a group of people that were secularists, like not secularists, but solitary practitioners. But we would all come together to learn different things about about our particular faith and different perspectives on it. So you can have a whole mess of different things within the religion, because there is no, like, unlike monotheistic religions, which have holy books, or even a polytheistic religion like Hinduism, there's long traditions of long histories and rituals and mythologies and philosophies that are built up within these religions. Paganism is kind of a hodgepodge of different things. And we definitely don't have time for me to go into all of that. But what I will tell you, that it tends to adopt from ancient religions that are polytheistic, that are more of an archetypal idea of gods and goddesses, or you can be pagan and worship Jesus. That is the nature of it, because you can it is make your own adventure religion. And for myself, I'm an atheist pagan. I still participate in the nature rituals during the year, because we are nature, we are a part of it. So on a psychological level, it gives me a lot of benefit, but I don't believe that there's anything supernatural going on. And there are atheo-pagans, like, they exist. Or there are people that, for example, believe in like the Celtic gods or the Egyptian gods or Greek gods, or adopt Native American mythologies into their religion, and they practice those beliefs.
What would you say is like the central part of the pagan belief system? Like, is it have to do with the nature worship? Is that like a
Yes,
central
that's the
component?
big part. That is a big part, especially if we're talking about the Wiccan tradition, which is ones that most Westerners are most familiar with, because that is ones that most people get familiar with first. It is a very Western idea when we're talking about the modern idea of paganism. It comes from Wicca, which started in the 1940s and 50s in England with Gerald Gardner, and kind of came over here and really started taking root in the 60s and 70s, especially with the feminist movement. It really started taking steam because this is a very female empowered religion, which is very attractive to people like me who are feminists, because a lot of the goddess aspects have been washed away in most monotheist religions. So it's very attractive to people that want to adopt that goddess persona and have that a part of their lives. Because like in the Catholic religion, you have Mary, you know, but she's like a subset. You know, you're still worshiping God the Father. Jesus
she's like
is
a
the
demigod, right?
Yeah, she's like lower on the totem pole, you know.
Yeah.
You know, like most monotheism, is very male dominated. And the pagan religion, yes, there are traditions that are very goddess oriented, or you can have like a lord and lady, which is like which is how I interpret it, that they're equals. There's not one above the other, and because the two were together, you know, they cause creation to happen. Because like paganism is very sex positive, very queer positive, very diversity positive. So a lot of people are attracted to it, especially those of us in the modern age who have had a lot of monotheism has left a lot of bad taste from it, especially when it comes to prejudice, you know, bigotry against marginalized communities. We welcome everybody in. So it was very attractive to people. And then as time goes on, people start adopting sort of things from their own culture into the religion. So let's say, for example, that you are an American, but your family comes from Greece, and you decide that you want to start practicing the pagan religion. You might adopt the Greek pantheon into your worship, and you might start worshiping Apollo and Artemis and Zeus and
just
Hera.
Because you like want to, because of
you can you can just decide, because this is a part of my bloodline, so these are what my ancestors worship, so I want to adopt that. Or like me, I really got it. I have some Celtic background, but do I know most of it? No, because it was not really something part of my life. But I got really into the Celtic gods, and that was the pantheon that I was attracted to, with a little bit of Norse thrown in, because Vikings are cool. So like that type of stuff got kind of thrown in. So it really is whatever you're attracted to and what speaks to you on they will say spiritual level. I would say a psychological, cultural level. Because there's certain things that we use to identify ourselves, and the things that we adopt about who we are and fit our personality and the type of things that we're influenced by. So a lot of pagans will adopt that into their practice.
And you mentioned that you started out as a witchlet.
A witchlet, yes.
And then you ended up as a high priestess.
Yes.
Who gave you the promotion? And how do you get that promotion?
It was really funny because I started just as a solitary practitioner. And then when I went through my divorce, and my husband is a very, he was describing himself as a Darwinistic Taoist pagan at the time. He had kind of, you know, he is all philosophy, but like, you know, he doesn't believe in woo-woo stuff, but he does believe that he did believe there was a sort of energy that flows through the universe. And I'm using energy not in like the scientific term, and like a spiritual term, energy kind of thing. And so what happened was, because we were both attracted to the same thing, we started you know, hanging out in pagan circles and meeting different types of people. And my best friend, who's still my best friend now, we got into his group that he was running at a local witch shop here in Sarasota that no longer exists. And through over time, I was like an understudy. I was a student, and I started really getting into it. Then after about a year or two, I would say, he was like, hey, do you want to become a high priestess, within Order of the Night Star Rising? That was the name of the particular group that I belonged to. You can Google it. There's some old early 2000s or late 2000, early 10 stuff online about it. Go ahead and look it up. It's cheesy. Anyway, if you can't find it, you can go in the D-Back machine and find it if you're really interested. But it's on there. And he asked me if I wanted to start becoming a high priest, which is basically you start giving instruction to people that want to learn the craft. And you also, so you're kind of a teacher, but our philosophy with our particular group, that everyone is a teacher and everyone is a student. So like, let's say, MD aware, that you want to learn Reiki to heal people, because I know that's very big in the medical profession. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh, you're pulling on some strings.
I know, I probably am. So, and I would say, okay, you want to learn Reiki? You want to learn the history behind it? And so I would make you go learn about it. Okay. You would come back to me, teach me what you learned, and I would help fill in the gaps. And then I would make you teach a class on it. Because we didn't want to be the person that would just bestow knowledge on the witches. Right. We wanted them to learn. We wanted them to be proactive learners. Like you do this with kids, you help them want to get engaged in the learning and learn a little bit of things on their own, depending on their education. These were adults. So I'm like, I'm not going to hold your hand, man. Like you're a big grown up. Go do some work. So we would taught that way. But there are people within the religion that will bestow the knowledge onto the witchlets and give them deep, vast knowledge of the universe and how it works. And that's a lot of gatekeeping, and we can go into those weird politics and that type of thing. So that's the way we operated. But I would lead rituals for Sabbaths are holy days within the pagan religion. So Halloween, for example, is Samhain. This is pretty common. If I say Samhain, a good portion of people that understand the history behind that holiday kind of know what I'm talking about. So I would act as high priestess. My best friend would act as high priest, and we would conduct a ritual for Samhain during the pagan New Year. So that's the type of thing we would do. And we would volunteer people to participate, because we would make them do things, because that's what you can do when you're in charge.
Interesting. And so you talked about The Craft. Craft.
Not the 1998 movie with Nev Campbell, though a very good movie. And interesting enough, the high priestess of Salem, high witch of Salem, I can't remember her name right now, but she has a pagan shop in Salem, Massachusetts, was a consultant on that movie, on how to make sure that they were being authentic to the craft. And now you can buy a book of matches at her shop for like $5. I was just in there maybe 8 years ago, and it's pricey. Wow. So, yeah.
But yeah, so what is the craft? Like, what does that entail? Is it like these specific rituals or like?
So the craft is more of a pop culture term. Like it has kind of a mixed baggage within the pagan community, but basically this is the form of doing actual witchcraft, which is it's a form of formalized prayer. So when you're doing any sort of magical ritual, and you're for example, if you're praying, I would say like, God, please let me get this job. I would really like to get this job, and if you will bless me, I will get this job. Okay, so the difference when you're doing a witchcraft spell for a new job, you would actually make it more active. You would use certain herbs to enhance your ability to attract the type of job you want. You get very specific about what you want to attract into your life. And you would call on a deity that would help you get a job. So for example, like let's say you are a craftsman, like you are a woodworker or a metalsmith or anything like that. You might call on like a blacksmith god, because those are jobs that have to do with actually making things.
Hephaestus or someone.
Yeah, like something like that. Yeah, and then you would call on that god to help you get that job, to attract it to you. But I'm putting this caveat in there. You would still have to send out resumes, because guess what, people? Right. No matter how much you do magic, unless you put out the resumes, nobody's going to know you're looking for a job. So you have to do that part.
And so is that magic, like that herb thing in the prayer, like an integral part? Like you have to buy into that to...
Yeah, you have to have a belief that this thing is going to work. And because I went to school for psychology, and I understood how we psychologically prime ourselves, and you can trick your brain into making it aware of things that your conscious mind isn't paying attention to. And that's all magic is. And it's pattern recognition. But let's say I do a spell for this job, and then like let's say I'm a craftsman and I get a job at a carpentry shop. Let's just say that, okay? And I go in for the interview because I built up this false confidence kind of about it, that this is what I want. I am already psychologically preparing myself to talk about how good I am at my work, and kind of give myself this feeling of, okay, you know what, I did the work, and I'm going to bring forth into my life what I want. And then what happens was that
that's your view of it now.
Right. Like, but at the time, you think that it's the spell work. You think you did the spell. You think you did the spell, and the spell is working that the universe is responding to what you wanted.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's an extra. It would be the same thing if you prayed.
Right.
Okay. And you wanted, like, you prayed for the exact same thing. And like we'll use the carpentry thing. Okay, so Jesus was a carpenter, and like, oh, I'm being like Jesus, and Jesus was a carpenter, and I prayed for this job that I really wanted, and this other guy's, and the guy that happens to owns a carpentry shop is a Christian that you saw the Jesus fish outside his window when you went in for the job, and it's like, oh, God responded to my prayer. It's the same thing. It's just that it has a polytheistic magic front versus a organized religion front to it. It's the same old pony show, same just phenomenon. Different packaging. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just different packaging. But I think, but the thing is that within the pagan tradition, there's a lot of people that have scientific backgrounds. Like it's very science positive. It encourages its practitioners to actually learn how science works. It doesn't teach you about like social sciences, like, or how your brain works and how we trick ourselves and groupthink and all these different things. But it wants you, like, let's say you really care about climate change. It wants you to learn the climate change science, because to pagans, the earth is an entity into itself. And as stewards of the earth, and this is a secular view too, we are stewards of the earth, that we have to take care of it. This is the only home we got. So it adopts that. So they're like, learn about the science, so you learn how to take care of our home. But it adds that extra element of the spiritual, that we, that it's not just like we are a part of nature through natural evolution and stuff, that there's some kind of magical ether to the earth, and it is a being unto itself, like it has some sort of consciousness to it.
Interesting. I mean, I find this all very fascinating, and I think we should get back to it, but maybe we should get to some calls.
I would love some calls. I want to talk
before
to people.
We need to do one thing first. Okay. We need to shout out our patron of the week, because every single week we get to shout out a patron that donates through tiny.cc/PatreonTW, and we get to shout them out for supporting the show. This week's patron of the week is, drumroll, Melania's Dildo. Thank you, Melania's Dildo, and thank you to everyone else who contributes to the show. I can't believe what this show makes me say sometimes.
I love that you had to say thank you, Melania Silto. That was just thank you, Melania Silto, for making MDWare say that. That made me very happy.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I don't know what I signed up for. All right. All right. Now, without further ado, why don't we get to some calls? So first, we have a call from Puck in Ohio. And Puck wants to talk about our intuition. Puck, is this the Puck that we know from before? Or is this a new Puck?
This is Puck. Hi.
It's our Puck.
It's our Puck. Hi, Puck.
I have missed you guys so much. You have no idea.
Oh, we missed you too.
We miss you, honey.
So, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about intuition, yeah?
Yeah, and I know I probably should start by defining what I mean by it. And I suppose a good vague place to start would be when you know something, but you don't know how you know it. And specifically, I'm talking about things like danger assessment or how you will assess how you'll do with another person. And we would like to think that we should trust our instinct. Like, I get a bad feeling about this person. Maybe they'll hurt me, so I'm going to stay away. But it could be the good side, too. Like, I have a good feeling about this person, and it turns out not to work out. But it's very difficult to get a person not to trust their intuition. I was wondering what you guys had to say about intuition.
I mean, I think it's very similar to sort of what Helen was just talking about with pattern recognition sort of things. I don't know, that's my sense, is that intuition is just some sort of pattern recognition process in your subconscious brain, like what's running in the background that picks something up and pushes it to the front. I don't know. What do you think, Helen?
I think also too, this comes with the burden of knowing, like, you learn things, but you don't remember how you learned them. Like, I'm sure that some of the medical stuff that you learned and some of the psychological stuff that I learned, there's something that you don't remember what it was like to learn it. And I think also too, a lot of the stuff when it comes to intuition sends back to childhood of learning what is safe and what is not safe, and things that seem familiar to us sometimes can have a hint of danger to them, but you don't know why. Like, this seems familiar. For some reason, I'm getting red flags, or other things that you're like feel dangerous. And then afterwards you're like, oh, I had nothing to worry about. Because one thing is our brains are terrible at this sort of thing. We're terrible at it because we have all these different connections going on in our brains that between our emotional selves, our conscious self, our logical self. And as logical beings, when we try to differentiate ourselves and pull ourselves back and look at things a little bit more objectively, when those moments of intuition kick in, it's gut. You feel it in your gut. You're like, this doesn't feel right. But your logic will kind of come in and say, like, okay, well, like, let's see this for what it is. And then later you decide if it was benefit to your intuition or not based on as more information is given. And it's just because as you've grown up and gone through different situations, your brain, you have this natural instinct inside yourself to protect yourself and to be attracted to things that are safe. So we tend to pull ourselves to things that make us feel safe and pull us away. And then when we get more information, we go, oh, you know what? I was right about this, or I was wrong about this, or hey, it's a little bit in the middle. Because we always rationalize after the fact when we have those moments of intuition. It's barely ever in the moment because that's just how our brains are wired. So does that make sense, Puck? I don't know if this was on the line that you were trying to go down, but this is what I thought of when you were talking.
No, it does help. And I guess my problem with intuition is if you don't know where it came from, you don't know if it came from a fallacious source. And it's too prone to, I forget what the name of the fallacy is because I was always horrible at philosophy. When you say something like, oh, I have a bad feeling about this person, therefore I will not interact with this person. Oh, I'm safe, therefore I must have been right about my intuition that this person was not safe. I forget what the
confirmation
survivor
bias.
or confirmation. Yeah, that's it.
Mm.
Right. So, like, I don't know that people spend enough time trying to finely tune and calibrate their intuition, or if they just go with the, well, it's served me okay so far, and I'm going to count the hits and forget the misses. So this is why I wonder if it's really worth relying on if you get a bad feeling about assessing a dangerous situation, or how your relationship with a certain person is going to go.
Well, I think that,
like, have we tried building relationships with people that we have a bad feeling about to see if their bad feeling was justified?
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that we, at least in my experience, you get a lot more intuitions when they're negative. Like, I think you get a lot more negative intuitions than you do positive intuitions. And I think that's part of like the nature of just our body wanting to avoid harm more than anything else, or, you know, our humans in general wanting to avoid harm. And I think there probably is an element of confirmation bias that goes into it. And you're right, that if we don't analyze the intuitions, then how do we know, right? So I totally agree with your concern there. What do you think, Helen?
Well, I think that, like, there's something. So if you're having that gut reaction, I think it takes a moment for you to go, like, why do I feel this way? And we're terrible at this. Like, we are, because we are very emotional, unreasonable meatbags at times. So it takes us a moment to, like, go, why am I feeling this way? And I think that when you have those feelings of frustration, or something feels off, or something feels very right, and when it feels very right, it's much more difficult to do this, because we are pleasure-seeking creatures, and we're not going to question so much when things feel really great, you know, because it's like, you know, getting the dopamine dump, and then your brain's like, yay, this is gonna be wonderful. And then later on, you found, like, the person that you were having this really wonderful experience with turns out to be a jerk face. But in the moment, it felt wonderful. Those times when the fear kicks in, or something feels wrong, we will tend to want to pay more attention to that, because that's the survival part of our lizard brain, you know, yelling at us. So I think, I don't know exactly how we would do this, because we're kind of crappy at it, but taking a moment to differentiate and go, okay, my intuition is telling me that this may be great, or this is going to be kind of crappy, or somewhere in the middle. I think still taking that moment to analyze it, and kind of going in with a little bit more of your skeptic brain on, can help, because it might help people. Because I know I've had to engage this in certain relationships, because I've had to overcome trauma. And when you're overcoming trauma, it is very guttural and instinctual, and it feels intuitive. But at the same time, the trauma may not be accessing things correctly for you. So you have to, and I learned this through therapy, this is not anything that you can learn just, like, you know, right off the bat, like from 2 tries. This is something that took me a long time to practice, to take a moment and go, am I really under threat? Am I really in harm's way? Because something might seem harmful and it's not, or something might seem positive. It might seem like you're in a trustworthy, someone that you're willing to give your trust to, and you're not. So you have to be the gauge in that, because there's something in your gut that's telling you, this is familiar to me, whether it's good or bad, and it's something I should pay attention to. But do you give in completely to your intuition? I would try to engage your skeptic brain. You're going to be really crappy at it, because we're just crappy at it, but you just gotta, but it's something that you should always have that question on in your head going, is this too good to be true? Or, you know, that type of thing, you know, like, I think that helps. I think it helps people that are skeptical not to be fooled into certain situations and that kind of thing, you know, because, like, that's kind of my reading on it, because we're terrible at gauging situations a good portion of the time, because it's all instinct. Yeah.
You bring up a good point, Helen, because I think that maybe we're talking about a select, like we're already self-selecting a group here. I think maybe a lot of people don't think about their intuition and where it comes from, and they just say, oh, well, I feel like this is a bad situation, it's my intuition, and so I'm just going to trust my intuition, trust my gut, sort of thing. Like, how often do you hear that? Or something like, oh, mother's intuition, and like you hear about someone doing something crazy on the news because they had a mother's intuition about it. I think, Puck, your point is like extremely well made. If you don't engage your logical brain and try to analyze why you're feeling the way you're feeling, which is a very psychological technique, right? Like, Helen, I think you're betraying your own training.
I am.
When you say that, because most people, when they have an emotion, it's not their first reaction to say, now, why do I feel that way? They just feel it and act on it, right? But it's like a very insightful reaction to put the brakes on and say, well, wait, why am I feeling this way? What, like, is it a real thing? Like, is this fear that I'm feeling a real threat? Or is it something that's a product of like some lizardy part of the brain, So I think it's a very insightful way of looking at it, and a lot of people might not look at it that way. So I totally get where Puck's coming from on this one. Anything else you want to add, Puck?
We would tell people, we will tell our kids something like, if you feel unsafe, like, you don't wait to if you feel unsafe, act as if it's not safe and get yourself out of the situation, which is kind of the same as saying I validate your intuition. But, it's like, I guess maybe at a young age, you wouldn't know how to differentiate, like, just err on the side of caution versus, this is a proper, good assessment of the situation.
Right. But that's the survival, instinct that's selected for, right? It's like what Dan Dennett writes about in whatever that book is, somewhere behind me, Breaking the Spell, maybe, where he talks about, the person who had the intuition that there might be a tiger in the bushes and ran away is going to live longer, even if they're wrong. Like, that's the safer error to make, is the false positive error, than the person who intuits there might be a tiger but ignores it and says, well, I'm just going to continue, and then they get eaten by the tiger, right? If they're false negative. So yeah, I think that's it totally buys into our, the way our superstitions are programmed into us by our evolutionary history. That's the way I interpret it anyway.
Well,
what do you think, Puck?
But since we know that, are we going to then take the next step and say, then the proper thing is to throw out intuition as a means of gaining knowledge? Because I don't think we want to go that far either.
I agree, but I don't think it's a way that you gain knowledge, right? It's a way of I think it's like Helen said, you have to analyze why you're feeling something, because you say, well, you analyze it and you say, why am I feeling this way? What situations have I seen? And you try to bring it to the forefront and analyze it logically. And then you can, if you're able to do that, maybe you can, figure out why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and then validate the intuition, or not validate the intuition.
Well, I appreciate your insights and thoughts, you guys. I am, like I said, I'm a complete abolitionist. If I get a gut feeling about something, I get them just like everybody else does, but I put them completely aside and say, nope, I'm not going to even listen to that at all. And I'm going to try to do as much of a logical, rational, what can I explain about the situation? And that's usually what I go by, but maybe I'm taking it too far. So I appreciate the insights.
Hey, I totally buy it, and thanks for your call, Puck. We'll let you go, but I just want to tell you a quick story about when I was in med school. We had obviously bioethics, medical ethics lectures, and one of the things that really struck me was one of our professors. His whole point was that you can't rely on your intuitions, your moral intuitions, the stuff that's been programmed into you. because the stuff that you encounter is so often different and doesn't apply. And if you follow your intuitions, you're gonna fall into the wrong answer. And so that applies to like everything, the air quotes wrong answer from the, I guess you could say, from like the Western medical perspective. But that's stuff like, do you want to save everyone? Like, is it always the right thing to do to save someone's life? And like, I think most modern ethicists would argue that it's not always the right thing to do to save someone's life, because there are states that are worse than death, things like suffering, things like, and especially against someone's own will, right? And so that whole point of not necessarily trusting your intuition, questioning it, and even like Puck was saying, rebelling against it intentionally and sort of going where it leads you, because it can often generate a very like visceral reaction in your own mind, right? It makes you like, sometimes people describe that feeling of like, oh, I felt repulsed by the idea of doing X. Like even thinking about it repulsed me. And so it can be a real block for some people. I don't know. Have you encountered that sort of thing before, Helen?
Oh yeah. I wouldn't be human, I don't think, if I didn't encounter those things. To be fair. And it is really interesting because like we do have this tendency to throw caution to the wind and just experience things, though, like, everything in our environment is telling us like, don't do that. We've all done it, because we want to have the experience. And sometimes it's really positive, and other times things get, kind of blow up in your face, Yeah. A good portion of the time, sometimes nothing catastrophic happens, and right. That's the gamble of the dice. I think a good majority of people that have had, enough of these experiences and some good guidance going on, that they are good, even though the intuition is telling them not to, the risk is minimal.
Yeah.
So they'll override that desire to,
but that's their mind doing it, right? That's their like logical brain. It's not.
Yeah. Because we can rationalize ourselves into anything, like if we are, for good or bad things, like, do I need another, do I need something that I could make coffee, which would save me money, or I could go to Starbucks, but I'll rationalize myself going to Starbucks. I'm like, instead of like, making coffee, I get 5 more minutes to like, sleep in or whatever it is. And I need more sleep because, I work hard, and it only takes me an additional 10 minutes to go to Starbucks in the morning, or however we ever rationalize it. That's what we do, and it, because we're pleasure seeking creatures and we're going to do what we want. But I think that just the way that we are, we tend to want to have justifications for the way that we behave, and we will rationalize ourselves into those decisions, whether it's intuition or not.
Yeah, it's very hard to do it the other way.
Yeah, you can't do it the other way. You can't say like I reasoned myself into it, but it was really my intuition. It's always the opposite.
Yeah. Great. I mean, great call. Great first call. Let's keep going. If you would like to support the show out there, you can do so by donating to our Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTW. There's a couple of different tiers there. And you get your name shouted out during the show if you donate. You can also support the show by becoming a member. You get emojis in the chat. Your name gets highlighted in the chat, and you'll be immune to the chat timeouts. And that's all for as little as 99 United States cents per month. But hey, we've got some more callers on the line. Why don't we go to John in Florida? He's got a question specifically for you, Helen. John, are you here?
Yeah. Hi. How you guys doing? Hi.
We're doing great.
Hi, Helen. It's John.
Hi, honey. How are you?
I'm doing well. All the times we've talked, You've never told me what flavor of witchcraft you were involved with. You were a high priestess of, rather. I know we go through several phases. Most of us have gone through several different types, and then we end up in our senior lives being one or the other. So I was just wondering what you were, because you've never told me that.
I started out studying Wicca, and then I ended up as an eclectic high priestess because Wicca was a little too like rules thing for me, and like being a part of the Catholic tradition, I was just like, listen, I'm like, I had enough of rules. And then, because like, though my husband will say that you took one set of silly rules and replaced it for another set of silly rules, but which is true. if you're following like a structure, which
discharged,
yeah, but then when I moved on to an eclectic form of witchcraft, which is basically kind of a combination of like chaos. Okay, for all of you in the pagan community, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For you, not you muggles, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But like chaos magic and like high ritual magic, OTO magic, all these different sort of things. I did a hodgepodge of different things because I have ADHD, 1, and 2. Like I like to experience as many things as possible. And I think also at the time I was trying to seek out, like, I recognize this now, but I think I was seeking out like some kind of truth between like all these different forms of magic. Like, you know how like people would church shop and they try different religions. I think at the time I was trying to find like the real true form of magic. There must be like this, secret sauce to the universe that I must figure out, like the secret to the Krabby Magic Patty, and it's not, and that I think that's what I was doing, but I was justifying it in my brain as like, I just want to learn as much stuff as possible because, it's all under the same umbrella. But when I analyze myself and look back at myself at that time, I think I was trying to
for the magic key.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, the magic key to get to take me to Narnia or something, or take me to Middle Earth. That's what I was looking for. It didn't exist.
I found also that not necessarily in my own journey, but I found that people generally are looking for, and then a lot of these systems or traditions, they say, "Oh, well, you didn't do that ritual exactly right. Like you lit the candle 3 seconds after you moved widdershins to that station, and so you did it wrong. That's why it doesn't happen, right?" And so they always have some sort of ritual reason why what you're trying to do doesn't work, when the real answer is it just doesn't work, So, but have you experienced that where people just
we did, but our
excuse got involved through a shop, so yeah.
But our excuse was that Discordia, Eris was getting involved and intended for things to go wrong. So we would justify it that it was supposed to happen because Discordia came in and decided that we needed to do things a different way. And that was our way for us to justify screwing things up. So it was meant to happen because Discordia wanted it to happen.
Is this like a deity? Discordia?
It's a deity, yes. Yeah, Eris, the goddess of disorder. Yep, there you go. Kelly's getting excited. She is a goddess, and I think the Roman tradition or Greek tradition, I don't know, it's some, but she is a real goddess, and she would be like the coyote in like Native American culture. These trickster gods that throw chaos into our lives. Okay, so
and do people like worship?
Oh yeah, they worship.
God?
Yep, there's
Goddess?
cults and people that worship. Yeah. That's why we know so much about her, is because, and a lot of mythologies have some kind of like Loki in the Norse tradition. There are these gods and figures that will come in and cause chaos into lives because you're supposed to learn a lesson. Because life is about learning lessons, and Discordia is teaching you a lesson that like maybe you don't need to do things so damn organized and let some chaos into your life. And that's how we would justify it. So that's what we did, John. Like we would justify it that way.
Yep.
So this, and also like we didn't take it 100% seriously all the time. Like we did ritual because we wanted to celebrate a Sabbath and have a good time. And sometimes we did get very solemn. But I remember the times that we did get solemn, those mistakes didn't happen as much. Or if they did, we would try to redirect it. Like if let's say you're conducting a play and somebody fumbles a line, you just ignore it and move on. That's what we would do. We'd be like, okay, you fumbled. Let's just move on because, we don't want to interrupt the flow. And I think it's the same kind of thing because like ritual is all performance. It is because everybody likes drama. I like dressing up in crazy costumes and performing things. So I don't think that, so, it's kind of the same idea, especially with your friends. Your friends aren't going to judge you in a way that, like, if I was doing this at a public ritual. I remember, though, I went to an OTO ritual, which is
What's
like
OTO?
OTO is like it is based on the Golden Dawn. I can't remember the exact meaning of OTO. Do you remember, John?
Something Orientalist. I can't remember the.
Okay, if you know who Aleister Crowley is, you know what I'm talking about. But like, it is basically a high ritualized music based on like a lot of old Egyptian stuff of philosophy, but it's very high magic, and they take their shit very seriously. It is like we went to a public ritual and I was like, this is not my vibe. Like I felt like I was in church and I'm just like, this is not my vibe. And they take it very, very seriously. And that's just Ordo Temple Orientis. Thank you, Kelly, in the chat for reminding me of what that is. So yeah, it is a very high ritualized magic and it is very culty if you look into the history of it. Very interesting. I do recommend if you're into cults to look that stuff up, but it is very high ritualized magic. And it is where we were more the Discordian end of things. The OTO is on the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think we were a little bit in the middle, more to the Discordian end of how we did ritual for sure.
No, okay. I'm still super like
my question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm still super interested. I was actually wondering, like, do you guys have a neat, accessible documentary that you recommend for people who are interested in learning more about this sort of thing?
There is a documentary that actually one of my friends was in. Now I have to look it up.
In progress. John, do you have any recommendations? Do you know? You sound like you know something. You sound like you know some stuff.
Well, yeah, I'm getting a little old, MD. I've forgotten a lot, but
that's what happens, man.
Something of a compendium or an overview documentary. I'm trying to think if I ever really saw one that was decent, and I can't think of one.
Like I don't want to go into one of those like History Channel, fake mockumentary situations,
dude. Okay, like MD. Okay, dude, I'm gonna have to look it up because there was really going. It was actually on Netflix.
So look one up, and
I will send it to you.
Everyone, Helen's gonna put it in the comments below this video.
I will. I'm gonna do
it for everyone to check out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Great. Thanks very much, John.
Yeah. I'll let you go because you need to get to another caller. So thanks a lot and great to talk with you, Helen. And MD, you are amazing. So that's all I'll say about that. So goodbye.
All right. Bye, John. I'll talk to you later, sweetheart.
That was great. Like, this is really interesting. I'm so glad that we had this. It's an interesting rabbit hole. I will could chase this all night, I tell you.
I know it's one of those things, but like I will look up the documentary because there was actually it's going to have a little bit of its like cheesiness, but it's more of an analysis of modern witchcraft between like going from paganism to the OTO and how all these different practices have infiltrated the culture. because witchcraft is one of the fastest growing religions in Western culture. So
Can't be worse than Catholicism, man.
because people are replacing modern, like old religions with this new spiritual practice, which comes into witchcraft and new agey beliefs and all the woo. So
yeah, we've all seen that.
Yeah, we've all seen it. Yeah, because everybody's looking for a guru.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we should keep rolling with calls.
I love
but
calls.
Hey, we've got another little announcement first. By now, you know that our Truth Wanted store is up and running again, and we have been featuring a special limited time item each month. This month's t-shirt is Bigfoot saw me. Nobody believed him. You can see it right there in the middle of the screen. All the Truth Wanted merch and other ACA merch can be found at tiny.cc/merchaca. And if you want to hear content in audio only form, you can visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts for all the latest ACA shows. Just before we move on, I finally they sent me my very own Truth Wanted shirt. And I'm totally excited to wear it. And hey, you can have one of your own.
Yeah, go buy some merch.
That first one, tiny.cc/merchaca. Very exciting. All right, let's talk to Jason. Jason is calling from Texas, and he's calling about, I think he wants to talk about religion and how religion affects mental health.
Okay.
Do I have that right, Jason?
Yeah, pretty much. I was wondering, because Helen was talking about studying psychology and then practicing paganism and then the whole deconstruction thing, and I was wondering if you recognized maybe a change in your mental health, or if that was something you dealt with, if you ever dealt with any mental health issues, if you're willing to talk about it. And because I've heard a lot of people discuss how, whenever they get out of religion, sometimes their mental health suffers for it, or a lot of people they feel a lot healthier. I don't know. I just wanted to get your take on it.
Well, unlike a lot of people that deconvert, I didn't go through like an angry atheist stage. I didn't go through I'm very angry at the world for teaching me BS. Like, I didn't go through that stage, but I did go through a letting go of my magical thinking stage and having to really grapple with that. I think the most distressing thing to me was the fact that the universe doesn't really care about me or anybody else that exists in it. That it's completely indifferent because the universe is going to universe, basically. And that was a little harder for me to grasp. I wasn't so mad at, I'm obviously angry at the structure of a religion. If religion was benign, I wouldn't care. But the fact that religion causes so much harm, and especially the work that I've done with recovering from religion, I've learned this a lot because I'm always hearing over and over again the pain and the trauma that religion has caused people. And that always activates my heart, and I want to help people as much as I can. But for me, it was letting go of this idea that anybody cared outside of, my immediate circle and the people that knew me and actually cared about me. And I had to let go of this idea that there's going to be something beyond my life. When I die, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm probably my atoms are just going to turn into other matter. I might be a paint can in my next life. Great. Wonderful. I'm not going to be around to experience it. And I think that was a little harder for me to grasp because paganism teaches you reincarnation. You are, and even if you're not going to have your another life as being on this plane, you could be an alien, or a spirit or whatever that is. You're going to, somehow your consciousness of who you are is going to exist, and I think that that was harder for me to let go of. It wasn't traumatizing, but I've noticed that the more that I learn to accept reality as it is, I tend to be a healthier person. I'm not trying to have wishful thinking so much. I just have to live, even with other human beings that think differently than me, or they are dealing with their own crap or whatever it is, I might even disagree with them, but I'm more willing to accept it. I'm more like, well, they're going through their crap too. I can completely disagree with them, but I still see their value as a human being, rather than trying to have wishful thinking of, well, you should believe in what I believe in because this will make you better. Like I have this more radical acceptance of how things are. And I that was something that really letting go of is just radical acceptance of, like, this is how it is. Like, even when I go through really bad things, I don't go through a lot of denial. I go directly to anger and then radical acceptance. I'm like, I'm mad about it, but it is what it is. And there's nothing I can do about it. So let's just deal with it.
I like what you have to say about the radical acceptance. I think that's really neat, because you hear a lot of people say, I'll tell people I'm not interested in what you're saying religious. Well, I'll pray for you. I'm like, I didn't want you. I didn't ask you to pray for me. And what they're showing right there is they don't accept me for me being myself and who I am. And no, I think that's really interesting. MD, do you have any experience with this, man?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's like so I think that Helen hit part of it. I think a lot of expectations are changed. Expectations that you put on yourself are changed. Obviously, it depends on what you're coming out of, but I think for a lot of religions, when you there's a certain like ethical expectation that is purposely set with the bar at an unachievable height. Right? Like that's part of certainly the Catholic, and like I would say most Christian faiths, is they would say like Jesus was perfect, God is perfect, but we will never be perfect. We are born flawed and sinful. And so all you can ever do is fail. And that's why you need the grace of Jesus to, forgive your sins and blah, blah, blah. And so I think that if you really believe that, if people really believe that, and they're constantly being self-critical and measuring themselves up against this like purposefully unattainable standard, then I think it absolutely causes mental health harm. But I mean, I think that you can encounter that same type of harm packaged up in different wrapping, right? It doesn't have to be even religious, right? It can be, pressure that comes from your parents, or, you're not living up to the expectations of your community, your teacher, your boss, your whatever, or it could be social media related, right? Like, I think it's probably in the same vein as like, wow, look at how great that person's life is that I'm watching on Instagram. Why isn't my life like that? It's a form of forcing you to be self-critical. And I mean, I think
it really is
that the freeing thing when you like, so I think that the being an atheist is not necessarily is not anything special, right? I think the special thing that makes a lot of atheists and free thinkers and secular humanists feel different is the journey they've been on to get where they are. Because a lot of them, I think, didn't start out. Some of them did, maybe a lot of them did, but there's a big portion of people who have stories maybe like Helen and myself, where we started from somewhere else and we went on that journey where we got rid of that expectation. In some respect, we got rid of that expectation and we felt the weight lift off our shoulders for a second there. And then it's like what Adam Savage said in one of his addresses to like at some atheist conference. He's like, there is someone, looking over my actions and judging me, and that person is myself. And it gives you the opportunity to set your own standard for who you want to be, the kind of person you want to be, the standard you want to set. And I think that's the very freeing thing, is then that's what makes us feel so enlightened, is that, and what I think drives a lot of those angry atheists is that they feel like the wool has been lifted from their eyes, and they want to say, like, wake up, everyone. You don't have to do this.
Mhm.
Like, you can set your own rules. You can, reject everything, all the other BS. So, I mean, this is getting a little bit further afield from your question about mental health, but I mean, this is more of like a mental wellness thing rather than like a mental illness thing, if we're talking about a mental health in general, right? I don't know that you could specifically link religion to specific mental illnesses, but I think that having a healthy relationship with reality is generally good for your mental wellness. I don't know. Does that make sense to you, Jason? What do you think?
No, that's huge. The connection to reality thing. I just did a paper over some stuff related to these topics, and the connection to reality and fundamentalist thinking, and being able to navigate reality and how you are with your neighbors and people of differing thoughts. Those things all have strong correlations with each other. So I know what you're saying. How do you feel about, because there's a lot of recent studies, I mean, as of 2022, about religious trauma syndrome. Two specific studies I'm thinking of are based out of Australia. Wish I had them in front of me. I could go dig it out, but it doesn't matter right now. But that said, they're saying that religious trauma syndrome is very similar to CPTSD, but it seems to be, it's very targeted, specifically towards LGBTQ, non-heteronormative, non-gender conforming, subculture type individuals. And people are treating it very similarly to CPTSD, but at the same time, there's like this socio-cultural aspect to it that isn't the same thing as like a car crash trauma, or let's say a continued abuse in a household trauma. This is something that's like encompasses everybody around you. So they're still figuring that out. So you had mentioned that there may not be specific health issues related to religion, but with religious trauma syndrome, could that be possibly the first one we're really seeing? I mean, I don't know. That's kind of where my mind's going.
So this is the first time I've heard of that term. Can you define it? Like, what defines religious trauma syndrome?
Oh my God, I'm trying to dig my.
That is a deep dive that we could do. It is complex.
Right now. It's
give me a cliff note.
Very similar to CPTSD. I'm literally pulling it out right now. So pretty much.
What's CPTSD? Is that like
complex post-traumatic stress disorder?
Oh, complex. Okay.
Yeah, it shows other symptoms and signs as regular PTSD, and it tends to be chronic and years on of certain things that just the initial PTSD, but it tends to manifest in other ways besides just the normal criteria under PTSD. So, religious trauma syndrome has specific triggers related to religion, especially people that grew up in very, very puritanical, very controlling religions. You think of like Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientologists, people like those that grow up in these very almost cult-like ideas of religion. And the religion, they are socially isolated. They are they're emotionally manipulated. They deal with nightmares in regards to the religion, whether it's fear of hell. Their pastors have put these fears into them. They tend to have trauma responses into even like prayer or seeing certain symbols. It would be the same thing. Like if we take someone that went through war, okay, and they've been 10 years out of war, but fireworks go off and they have a traumatic response. Even though they know they're not in combat anymore, the brain takes them to that same place. It's the same with the religious trauma syndrome. It is very complicated, and it can develop into other mental disorders as far as OCD, depression, anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, things like that, that it develops into other symptoms that tend to carry on a lot longer. And that's, and it all stems from the religious base that they were brought up in. Some religions don't, everybody. And the thing is though, is that like, I wish people would talk more about, like, even though you might be brought up in a religion that doesn't do a lot of traumatizing, like I've never grown up in purity culture, but as a queer person and as a woman, I definitely got messages that I had to work through. And I definitely, I wouldn't call it like, you know, extreme trauma, but there was little niches in the armor that happened because I had to learn to be okay with myself. And then I had to get over the misogyny. And then I had to get over certain roles that I was supposed to play as a, you know, what the church was telling my gender is supposed to play. You know, same for men. There's, you know, if you're a cis man, there's certain things that you're supposed to play according to religion. And people don't want to call this trauma because I think that they think that it needs to be very traumatic that happened to people. But I can tell you, this is a trauma because you're being told this is how you're supposed to be. And if you go against that, there's social isolation, there is rejection, there is there could be a loss of employment, a loss of friends, a loss of family if you don't conform to certain ideas of within in that structure. This can happen to queer people. This can happen to people that are cis heteronormative, because the structure is telling you, you must conform, you must be this. And if you go against that, any resource that's giving you financial, emotional security or familial security might be taken away. And that's going to cause a certain trauma on the person because that stability that we all rely on as human beings might be stripped away. And we're talking, and religious trauma does manifest in a lot of different ways, especially when we're talking about severe complex PTSD, because it does manifest the same. But I want to emphasize that when we're talking about this thing, is that you might not think that like, well, I'm not having nightmares about it. I might not, you know, I'm not being triggered by it, but like, I can't, like for me, prayer triggers me. It makes me deeply uncomfortable. It makes me deeply agitated because of the fact that it reminds me of all those lessons about how you're supposed to conform. And that sort of thing. And that's just one minor thing compared to someone that's been through more extreme forms of religion and what it can manifest and look like. You know, so it's a very complicated topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting.
I'm sorry.
I would imagine that we are going to start seeing a lot more of this, right? Like this is a relatively new definition, right? Well, religious trauma syndrome. Like this, actually, I don't think this term's been around for that long, right?
No, it's still being being studied. It's still a new phenomenon.
Yeah, so I mean, it got to be a situation where we're going to be seeing more and more people with this, like air quotes, diagnosis, and I mean, who knows what's going to happen with it, right? Ideally, this would be a pathway for us to recognize the trauma that religions might be inflicting on people and try to, you know, at least make people aware of that, or, you know, maybe do something about it to change it would be the ideal. What do you think, Jason?
I agree with you. It is pretty new. The article I'm looking at is from the Social Science and Medicine 2022. It's called Religious Trauma and Moral Injury from the LGBTQA+ Conversion Practices. It's based out of Australia. They first started talking about religious trauma, I think, right around 2013. It says religious trauma and moral injury are interlinked. The literature on religious trauma is mainly focused on abuse, control, and coercion in religious contexts. A lot of it has to do with like the where they try to pray the gay away type stuff. Like moral injury, religious trauma shares many symptoms with PTSD and complex PTSD. Stone 2013 describes religious trauma as pervasive psychological damage resulting from religious messages, beliefs, and experiences. So what Helen's saying is completely pertinent. I mean, it's just pervasive psychological damage. Religious trauma generally accrues gradually through long-term exposure to messages that undermine mental health. Religious trauma is useful to describe the coercive, controlling, and abusive elements of religion-based LGBTQA+ conversion practices, especially the gradual accrual of undermining messages. So
yeah, maybe that's the big difference that makes it so much harder to study, is because it's a gradual, long-term exposure rather than an acute, like very obvious, bombastic, traumatic exposure.
Yeah, I mean, even still, but I mean, it says yes and no because pervasive psychological damage resulting in religious messages, beliefs, and experiences. So it could still be an acute thing that happened. It can be.
Sure, it could be.
I just think that it's because it has to do with all those different elements of existence. It has to. It's like dealing with the metaphysics of every, you know. So it's intense. It's a pretty intense thing to deal with. That's like your schema of life that's been, you know, taught to you since you popped out. You know, it's pretty wild. But yeah, I figured I'd bring that up. You know, I hear a lot of people talk about that. So, and I think it's interesting that the difference between, let's say, somebody who's pagan or polytheistic and is more accepting of people versus, let's say, somebody who grew up Southern Baptist or Catholic, and you have that whole self-hate thing going on. It's interesting. So, but I appreciate y'all answering my question.
Definitely. No, thanks for the call.
Thanks, man. I love you.
Great to hear from you. Great to hear from everyone. This week we've got a couple of announcements before we go, but we're getting towards the end of the show. If you have time, we might have time for a quick call if anyone wants to buzz in. But hey, if you can arrange to be in the Austin area on March 26th, consider joining us in the studio audience at the ACA Free Thought Library for a live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen will be hosted by Secular Rarity and Christy Powell, and the Atheist Experience will be hosted by Jim Barrows and Secular Rarity. You can email us if you want to get in touch at truth@atheist-community.org. You can reach out to the ACA at tv@atheist-community.org. And you can see what's been going on at our website at atheist-community.org. There's also a Facebook group. It's run by fans and for fans, and you can find it at tiny.cc/FBTWG to interact with other fans. So check that out. And you know, have you ever said to yourself, I really love the content the ACA creates, but I wish there was a way I could get it all the time? Well, we've got you covered. We have a brand new 24/7 AXP TV live stream. You can tune in any time of the day to experience a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. You can watch or just listen to your favorite hosts and discover some hosts you've never heard of. You can visit tiny.cc/AXPTV to join the fun. I think I'm going to tune into that because I'll tell you, when I'm post call, so after I've worked like a full 24, 36 hour shift and I come home and I need to decompress, I just like to put something on, some background noise to fall asleep to. This sounds like the perfect thing. I think I'm going to put it on next time I'm post call. It'd be great fun. But hey, we're coming to the end of the show. So thank you, Helen, for being on the show. Where can our audience find you to learn more about you?
So if you all want to get in touch with me, I do have a atheist community email, so you can contact me there. You can also contact me at Recovering from Religion at helen@recoveringfromreligion.org. You can also go to our Discord, the Atheist Community Discord. I am on there as House Bells. And if you want to connect with me on Facebook, I'm Helen Greene, and my face is on there. So there are many Helen Greenes on Facebook, but if you want to connect with me there, you will see my face. So you can connect with me there. I am not a YouTuber person, so you're just going to have to find me on the socials. So you're going to have to do it that way. That's how it is, y'all. Or you can just tune into previous episodes of the Nonprofits, the flagship show of the ACA, and find me on there. I'm there too.
Fantastic. And hopefully on future episodes of Truth Wanted, right?
Yes, I will come back and talk about paganism and woo stuff. This was a really great experience. Thank you, MD Aware, for being so generous and wanting to hear about my past and my perspectives. It is really, really wonderful. And I want to say thank you to all the wonderful people at the ACA and for you being a wonderful host. And this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
That was great. Let's see what else we got. So we are going to do the Atheist Community of Discord after show together, right?
Yes.
So you can join us there.
You can ask me questions or MD Aware questions. We will take questions. We like questions.
She's much more interesting than me. Direct questions to her.
No, you're interesting too. You have a big brain. You have a big medical science brain. So I love big brains. Like I love big butts.
So you can find us there. Come join us at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. That's where we'll be right after the show. And hey, last but not least, we have to thank the crew. Can we get the crew cam up? Crew cam. Yes, there they are. And of course, the crew cam cat. Always there every week. The crew cam cat. What would we do without them?
What would we do with that crew cat? It would fall apart.
Absolutely. I mean, that crew makes this whole thing happen every single week.
Sure.
Look at how many of them there are working behind the scenes for us and for you guys out there. All right. Just to bring it forth again to your minds, the question for our We Want the Truth segment this week is, what's the worst thing you can say to a conspiracy theorist? Once again, we want you to comment on the video, and your comment may be read on next week's episode. So tune in next week to hear the top 3 answers. That's it for tonight. I've been your host, MD Aware, and as always, remember to keep wanting the truth.
Watch the Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat Sundays at 3 p.m. Central between the Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.